Hey, it's Nikki, and today's episode is a special series called In the Loop, Communicating for Maximum Leadership Impact with my friends from Borshoff. I am a huge fan of the work Borshoff does to advance internal communication, and so happy that they have joined Gut Plus Science for a special series. Get ready for internal communication inspiration. There's so many nuggets of wisdom here.
Hey, it's Katherine Coble, your host for a very special Gut Plus Science series called In the Loop, Communicating for Maximum Leadership Impact. Our big goal is to help leaders become better communicators, because communication is your best tool for leading well. Let's go ahead and dive into this month's topic. So, I have a confession to make. Sometimes I am not a great listener. Sometimes people tell me things and I don't really hear them. You might not think much of this confession, but as someone who really prides themselves on being focused on other people, it's actually a terrible trait that I know I can fix. And as a leader, I know that I have to fix it. Now, on this podcast, we very often talk about great leadership and especially great communication traits that help make you a better leader. Well, listening is actually one of those major communication traits. We often think of communication as what we say. It's about our words. It's what we're imparting to other people. But I have learned that the most important part of communicating is actually the listening part. Now, if you're not listening well, you just aren't communicating well. So I've recently been giving this a lot more thought, and I have been trying to understand what it takes to be a great listener and why it's so important. And today, I want to share some of the things that I've learned with you in hopes that you'll join me in really recommitting yourself as a leader to becoming a better listener. So today, we'll break this topic down as follows. First, we'll cover why listening is so important and the impact that it has on your leadership. We'll dig into why it's so hard and what it is that gets in the way of good listening. Then I'll share some tips that I've discovered over the years that can help you to improve your listening skills. And we'll even cover some of the ways that you can help other people improve their listening skills a little bit as well. My hope is that you'll walk away with something you can use immediately. So let's jump in. First, let's talk a little bit about why listening is so critical. You know, there's a great quote that I've heard by an author named David Augsburger, and he says this: "Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they're almost indistinguishable." I love that. It's a truth that I can see anytime I give my attention to a child. You know those moments when you truly listen as a child tells you a story or shares a concern with you. At that moment, they want nothing more than your attention, to know that you really heard them. It brings some comfort and some encouragement to them. It's better than any words you could say to them, just your attention, and to know that they have been truly heard. That's what's so important and so comforting to them. And leadership is a lot like that too. Sure, it's different. I mean, your employees, your colleagues, they aren't looking to you for love, but they are looking to you for your attention. They want to be heard. They want to know that you are truly listening. Leaders who don't listen have less credibility and they just have less connection with their employees. We all know this to be true, but we still don't take the time to be sure that we're intentional and that we're truly listening. And the reality is that listening is hard. Seems like it should be easy, but it's hard. Now, when we listen, we really only remember about half of what we heard immediately after we heard it. And after about 48 hours have passed, that percentage is down to less than 25%. The funny thing is, we all think that we're better at listening than we actually are. Now, some surveys that I've read show that about 96% of people think that they're good listeners. And in many ways, it just comes down to understanding how to listen better in order to become better. You really have to practice. You have to do it actively. It's a skill set. It takes work, but the good news is that you can do it. You don't have to be born a naturally good listener. It's not a talent. It really is a skill. But again, listening is hard. I mean, think about it. We have so many distractions in our world today. So many things are pulling at us. Sometimes the people communicating to us aren't doing it very well, and we tune out. Other times, our mind just cannot process as fast as the other person is sharing information. I actually have this issue with audiobooks sometimes. I really can't listen to certain types of books on audio because my mind just can't process what I'm hearing fast enough. Now, what's funny about this is that sometimes the opposite is actually true. The average person can listen at a rate of about 125 to about 250 words per minute, but we can think at a rate of about 1,000 to up to 3,000 words per minute. So sometimes our minds take a detour while someone is talking to us. Another example of a situation where we might find it hard to listen well is if there's some stress or some frustration involved. Sometimes we're just in a situation that feels confrontational and we aren't listening well because we're preparing our response in our minds. We want to be sure we have the right comeback, or we feel the need to defend ourselves. And we just let fear take over rather than truly listening to what the other person is saying. There are a lot of different reasons why we might not be listening well. So we shouldn't necessarily beat ourselves up over it. Instead, we should just recognize what's happening and understand what we can do to change it. Now, as I've thought about this topic, and I've counseled leaders on better communication, I've seen a lot of examples of bad listening. But I've also seen some great practices that leaders are putting into place to improve their listening. And those are some of the things I want to share with you today. Now, keep in mind, deep listening is an immersive experience. You can't be distracted, can't be thinking about yourself. All your focus has to be on the other person, on their body language and what it's communicating to you. They'll give you subtle clues about what they're really trying to say. So learning how to listen with your ears and with your eyes can make a big difference. So we're going to talk about that and break that down a little bit more. Here are 5 basic practices that I think if you put these into place, you can and you will improve your listening. So number 1, consciously push distractions out of your way. This is probably the biggest one for me. If you're like me, you like to get things done. You feel great when things are crossed off your list. And as a result, you often multitask. Well, you think you're multitasking, but the truth is you're actually multi-switching. That's because it's nearly impossible to focus on 2 things at once. And while you think you're doing a great job at 2 or more things at once, you're really just dividing your time between them and probably doing a mediocre job at both. Now, for me, this shows up a lot in my relationship with my husband. He likes to talk a lot. He loves to tell stories, and his stories are never short. So very often, I find myself multitasking while he's talking to me. I know it's going to be a long story, but hear me out. I'm not talking about doing things like folding the laundry or drying dishes while you're listening. Those are things that can likely be done while you are fully listening to someone who's sharing an idea or telling a story. What I'm talking about are those things that take your brain's attention away from the conversation. So, for example, if I'm watching television and my husband starts to tell me a story, to be a truly good listener, I really need to actively turn my attention to him. Otherwise, I'll just keep listening to the television while I'm nodding along to whatever he's saying, never truly processing any of it. The key to this practice is making a conscious decision to turn away from a distraction and turn your attention toward the other person. Until you do that, it's highly unlikely that you'll be able to truly listen and hear what they're saying. Some things that can help you with this include making eye contact with the other person or changing the position of your body so that you're facing the other person and away from the distraction. Simple, just small changes like this can help you focus on the other person and truly hear them, especially when you know this to be a factor for your ability to listen well. Okay, number 2, second practice, don't interrupt. No one feels heard when you interrupt them. No one. Interrupting another person is basically just telling them what I have to say is more important than what you have to say. Now, there may be times when you as a leader feel you need to shut down disrespectful talk or gossip, and that's not what I'm talking about here. What we're referring to are the times another person is giving you input or sharing some concerns. Maybe they're trying to communicate an idea, and we just interrupt them as a way maybe of correcting them or steering them to our ideas or even just dismissing their input. Now, when we interrupt, we're derailing their ability to communicate with us and we're seizing power in the moment. Is that what we want to do as leaders? Or do we want to give people an opportunity to contribute, to share a perspective different from our own? Think about why you want to interrupt before you do it. You can still share your opinion or a counter idea after they've shared theirs. What is the benefit or the damage that will occur in the relationship if you interrupt them? Really think about that. Number 3, ask questions, clarify, validate. Here's what I mean by that. When another person is sharing ideas or information with you, asking questions and really seeking clarity around those ideas all along the way of the conversation will help them know that you're truly listening. Simply summarizing what you heard at the end or paraphrasing along the way ensures that you're really tracking with them and that you're understanding what they're sharing with you. I actually find that when I do this, it helps lock the information into my brain better. On a much smaller scale, here's an example of what I'm talking about. Whenever I meet someone new and they introduce themselves to me, I always try to repeat their name aloud. For whatever reason, repeating their name in my own voice out loud has the same effect as taking notes. It just embeds their name in my memory in a much stronger way than just hearing them say their own name. Now, another way that you can show the other person that you're listening is to validate their feelings and to show empathy through your words and your body language. Sometimes when I encourage leaders to validate other people's feelings, they get a little concerned that they're going to give people the wrong idea. They're afraid that by validating another person's feelings, they'll lead the person to believe that they're agreeing with their ideas or giving them permission to act in a certain way. And that's not really what validating feelings is all about. When we validate another person's feelings, we communicate to them that we hear their emotions, that we recognize that they feel a certain way. We're validating the human being, and we're showing them that we understand the feelings that go along with this particular topic for them. So how do you do that? How do you validate feelings? Well, you really just simply acknowledge them. Say something like, I can see that this topic is a difficult one for you, and I understand. Tell me more about what this means to you. What that shows is that you want them to continue sharing and that you understand that this particular topic could be sensitive, difficult, hurtful, whatever is the case. Those are important steps to keep the conversation and the connection going. Number 4, develop conversational sensitivity. So this is a term that I recently heard and I love it. Conversational sensitivity is the skill of deliberately focusing on all of the secondary elements of a conversation beyond just the words that are being used. These secondary things, it can be all sorts of things. From the tone and cadence another person uses to silence, pauses, all of those other nonverbal cues that they share as part of their communication. Many times we just gloss over those things, or we only notice one, maybe two of them. But having conversational sensitivity gives us an opportunity to pick up on hidden meanings and nuances in tone. Think of conversational sensitivity as leaning in. If you're building your conversational sensitivity, you're listening a little harder. You're putting yourself in situations that will require you to engage with people that are different from you. You're looking for the layers. You're noticing what's not being said. I want to read a short excerpt to you that illustrates all of the depth that comes from nonverbal parts of communication. It's from the book How to Live a Good Life by Jonathan Fields, and it's so rich. I love this. Here's what he says. The vast majority of communication is nonverbal. Studies have found that words account for only 10 to maybe 30% of communication. What makes up the other 70 to 90%? Nonverbal cues like body language, facial expressions, vocal cadence and intonation, breathing, physical positioning. Learn to see and hear not just what's being spoken, but what's being said beyond the words. If someone is constantly looking around while you're speaking, you're not holding their attention. Look at their body. If their feet are turned away from you, they're just waiting for a chance to exit. Are they leaning in, engaged? Are they leaning back, aloof? Arms open and animated, excited? Arms crossed, closed and defensive? You can study up on so much of this, but the truth is you just pay attention. People's subtler cues are pretty easy to translate, and they often speak far more loudly than anything they're actually saying. Now, that's good stuff. Again, that's from Jonathan Fields in the book How to Live a Good Life. Now, let's move on to the final practice, number 5. This one isn't actually a practice so much as it's just a mindset. To be a better listener, you have to want to put other people first. To develop a listening mindset, you have to develop an other orientation. This is the heart of really all good leadership, and it's an idea that I try to champion every chance I get. From listening to decision making to vision casting, if you cultivate what I call an other orientation, you'll move naturally in the direction of becoming a better listener and really a better leader overall. Now, when I say other orientation, what I'm talking about is putting other people before yourself, thinking about what other people need to hear, not just what you want to say. Opening yourself up to other people's perspectives, not just narrowly focusing on your own. So how do you do this? Well, first and foremost, by staying curious. It's all about cultivating empathy for others and recognizing that the best motive for leadership is not to build yourself up, but to serve others and to build them up. Now, as we grow in our own ability to be better listeners, we're going to naturally come across other people who aren't as skilled in their listening. What do you do if the issue is that the other person isn't listening well? Well, you can help solve for that too with some coaching. First of all, no one wants to hear, "You're not a good listener." And really, that's not a very effective way to give someone feedback anyway. Instead, you can coach people to become better listeners in a few key ways. First, just make sure that you actually have their attention before you start sharing information. Have you made eye contact? Are they involved in another interaction or on their computer or phone? Engage them in the conversation and away from the other distractions before you get to the heart of the topic. Next, ask for feedback and alignment along the way. Ask the other person to summarize what they're hearing and how that fits with their understanding of the situation. Last, it's always a good idea to follow up after a detailed conversation with someone and put things in writing. This may not work for a conversation with your spouse or your child, but at work, it's perfectly acceptable and you should take advantage of it. Now, to this point, we've been focused on the physical act of listening. but there's more to it than just hearing and processing what you're hearing. Being a good listener is also about creating relationships and about leading well. A study from Forbes found that 86% of employees feel that they're not being heard fairly, and 63% believe that their voice has been ignored by their manager. It's difficult to lead a prospering company or an organization if the majority of your people feel they're not being heard, if they feel they're being ignored by the people who are supposed to be removing barriers for them in their work. So, if you go back to that last practice we discussed, cultivating a mindset that focuses on others, you'll be more likely to ask good questions and to make room for others to share their ideas. You'll also be less likely to make assumptions about people that distract you from hearing what they're truly saying. As we close today, I just want to encourage you. All of us can get better at listening and connecting with people. All of us can choose to have another orientation. Yesterday may be gone, but you still have today, and tomorrow awaits too. Choose to listen in a new way. You might actually be surprised by what you learn. Thanks for listening.
We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.